What is going on, everybody? You need to know that around week 5 or 6 is when people really start getting unhappy with their teams, and that is where we can grab the edge on the players that we need to be buying low and selling high on to make our team a super team later down the line of the year. In this video, I'm going to tell you exactly how to do that with the players you need to buy low and sell high, and even some possible trade packages you can use to get these other players on your team. So for those of you that are new, make sure to be subscribed because I drop these videos every single day. You've already found where the information is, so I would love to have you guys a part of the family. And make sure to stick around to the end of the video for the sell high player of the week. But you guys know me, I absolutely hate to waste people's time in these videos, so I'm gonna get straight into it. The player we need to be buying low on is Jordan Addison. He hasn't had the strongest start to the year. He's averaging a 65% snap share. His counting stats are continuously going under the radar. From the outside looking in, he's a mid-tier wide receiver that really isn't putting it together, and he just dropped a donut last week with not good usage. But the reality of it is he started out behind KJ Osborne in the depth chart for the wide receivers, which we knew was going to happen all along. We drafted him at a cost knowing it's going to take some time for him to ramp up, and that's exactly what's been happening. He's been increasing his snap share every single week, getting more and more usage, but he just hasn't had the super big fantasy point day or receptions to show for it. He's had 20 targets over the course of the season and about 6 per game if we take out last week, which doesn't really count because the entire offensive stats were completely shed in half. But what really makes him a good buy low and why I'm not scared about last week is because he's on the Vikings team, which is one of the most pass happy teams in the NFL, especially if their defense sucks. They're gonna have to pass a lot to stay in games. Their offense is 3rd in passing attempts and 1st in passing touchdowns. KJ Osborne's snaps have slowly been decreasing, and if not in the next coming weeks, by the end of the season, Jordan Addison is going to be the clear wide receiver 2 and a great offense. His value is at the lowest it'll be all season. Right now, he's the wide receiver 44. He will finish as a top 25 wide receiver, so take advantage of this dip while you can. Moving on to the next guy we need to be selling high is Khalil Herbert after almost being phased out through 3 weeks. But in week 4, he completely turns it around, seeing his highest snap share of the year with 23 total touches, again, the highest of the season. This is a pretty surprising stat, even though he did face one of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL in the Broncos, who have been dealing with injuries. But Roschon is still in this offense. Yes, he did take a backseat to Herbert this week in routes run, backfield carries, and overall usage, but he's still going to be a thorn in Herbert's side throughout the entire season. But the real reason we should be selling high on Khalil Herbert is because he just came off a 20+ fantasy point week, and that's skyrocketing his value. And while he could see a similar kind of usage throughout the entirety of the season, this offense is never going to produce like they did this week. And we're going to need this offense to be able to move the ball if he's going to be a consistent starter. The Bears just had their best game of the year by far. They're efficient in pretty much every single offensive metric. He's going to have a cap ceiling because this is probably not going to be the norm. He's going to need to be involved in the receiving game, and if Roschon gets all of that work, he needs to be involved in the red zone game. But if this offense can't move, they're not going to get in the red zone. So if we can take him and package him with another guy on our team, because again, we always want to be doing 2-for-1 trades to get the better player in the deal, I would do that 1000%. Get rid of the headache, give me a more consistent guy. But the next guy we need to be buying low on before it is too late, and that's going to happen pretty soon, is Tony Pollard. And you might not have expected this because he's averaged 15 fantasy points a game. He's been really efficient. He's still had pretty good usage, and he hasn't really had a game where his fantasy points just bottomed out to have no value. But again, this is the lowest you're going to be able to get Tony Pollard because he just came off a 9-point fantasy week, which is not going to happen often. And that was in a blowout game against the New England Patriots where he only saw a 50% snap share because they took him out of the game. And that's been happening a lot this season. He's really only played 1 or 2 full games, and in both of those full games, he's had over 20 carries and 5 receptions. He is a true workhorse back that hasn't had the potential to play the full games of the entire season, so we have to get him on our team while we still can before this stops happening. This team is 3rd in rushing attempts and 7th in rushing yardage, and this defense is good enough to where they can keep opposing offenses off the field, and the Cowboys are just going to have to run the ball to keep the clock going. Once these blowouts calm down, which is going to happen, his value is going to increase again, making it pretty much impossible to trade for him. But looking at another guy we need to be selling high on, that is Courtland Sutton. This is a guy that's been putting together a decent string of games recently. He's averaging just under 8 targets a game, and he's the wide receiver 25 in the year so far. But when you look more into the stats, he is actually standing on super thin ice. Yes, he's averaging 15 fantasy points a game, but he's also had 3 touchdowns in 4 weeks, and that is just not sustainable for the wide receiver position. Not to mention, he's seen all of this usage while Jerry Jeudy has been dealing with a hamstring injury, missing a game, and seeing a decrease in his snaps. The Broncos have also had a really easy starting schedule for the wide receiver position, their easiest of the year by far, and the rest of their season till their bye week at least is a very tough schedule. And a lot of people are forgetting that Courtland Sutton is the wide receiver 2 on this team behind Jerry Jeudy. The exact same thing was happening last year. Jerry Jeudy was dealing with a hamstring injury and slow to start the season as well, and everybody was coming out saying Courtland Sutton is the wide receiver 1, the guy you need to have. And then all of a sudden, Jerry Jeudy comes back, plays his full snap share, and he's pretty much phased out. And this is especially true if you think Marvin Mims is going to have a decent role in this offense. Me personally, I don't think that, but if you do, that's another reason to put him farther down your rankings. Regardless, his touchdown total is going to come down, and that's -6 points to every single one of those weeks. This is going to give him borderline double digits. And then you count in the fact that Jerry Jeudy's going to come back in his full snap share in a team that's led by Russell Wilson, but you won't be able to get much for him straight up. But if you can do a 2 for 2 or a 2 for 1, I would 100% get him off my squad while I still can, and his upside is still high on the outside. But the next guy that is an absolute stud that people are really getting worried about is Jaylen Waddle. Week 1, he was shadowed by Tyreek Hill. Week 2, he got injured. Week 3, he didn't play. And in week 4, the Dolphins had arguably the worst performance of their entire season. And I'd like to say almost all of the Waddle owners are getting impacted by this right now, and I can say that because I do have him in one of my leagues, and I'm feeling this exact same feeling. He hasn't put up these nuclear games that we've been drafting him for. He's had a slow start to the season, and he's only averaging 4 catches a game, but this is going to ramp up indefinitely. Like I said, he's been dealing with a whole bunch of unfortunate circumstances. He's the wide receiver 56 right now. We drafted him as a top 15 wide receiver. He's going to finish near that mark. You could probably get Jaylen Waddle for a guy like David Montgomery straight up right now, and if you can do that, 1,000,000,000% do it. You could also package a decent running back and a flex guy like Romeo Doubs with a lot of value and get him on your team. But he's still on a team that is second in passing touchdowns and air yard efficiency. He's going to be just fine. He's just had a slow start to the season, similar to a guy like Amari Cooper, who is another guy we need to be picking up and buying low on every chance we can get. And I absolutely love this one. He is top 3 in unrealized air yards this season, which pretty much means he has a whole bunch of untapped potential that's been waiting to be unleashed this season. And he's getting the target volume. He's averaged just under 8 targets a game, and he just came off a stinker last week when he only caught 1 pass but had 6 targets. Deshaun Watson is dealing with an injury, and people are just completely done with this Browns offense after the Chubb injury, and it's just not an appealing fantasy offense. But he is the wide receiver 32 on the year so far in a team that is going into their bye week this week, so it buys you a little bit more time if you want to get him on your team. But there's absolutely no way he finishes as the wide receiver 32. He's gonna be probably a top 20 at least wide receiver. You can do something like Alexander Mattison and another mid-tier wide receiver, and if you could do a guy like DJ Moore 1 for 1 for him, I would do that instantly. But looking at another guy we need to be selling high, and probably the sell high of the week, is Christian Kirk. Everybody was scared about week 1 when he got completely phased out of this offense for Zay Jones. The Jags came out and used Jones and Ridley in all of their 2 wide receiver sets, which led Christian Kirk to only 1 reception that game. But in week 2, Zay Jones comes out here and gets injured, and Christian Kirk gets 14 targets on the week, instantly having a 22-point fantasy week, followed up by a 15 and 16 fantasy point week after that. But he is an absolute sell high, because if we take out week 1 where Zay Jones was healthy, he is the wide receiver 10 on the year. But Zay Jones is slated to come back this week. I'm not saying he'll come back and Christian Kirk will go instantly back to his 1 reception, 0 usage role, but he's going to shake up this wide receiver room for sure. Kirk's volume has been blown up, and everybody's kind of forgot that Zay Jones was injured and now is coming back. And all of Christian Kirk's targets have been empty calorie and kind of pointless. And the funny thing is, Christian Kirk only has 1 red zone target on the year. That is behind Calvin Ridley and Zay Jones, who only played 1 game. The reason he was so valuable last year is because he got all of Trevor Lawrence's red zone targets, but now he's lost that role. He's probably valued around a mid wide receiver 2 in the market right now, and if you can trade him for like Calvin Ridley straight up, definitely do it. Now, he could still be valuable with Zay Jones, but it's just going to be a completely different look, and I don't want to be the one to be stuck with Christian Kirk when he's not valuable. Another guy we need to be buying low on, and probably has the lowest value out of all of these buy lows right now, is Breece Hall. He's the RB32 on the year and has only had 1 game with double-digit fantasy points, and Aaron Rodgers is out for the season, so the Jets are stuck with Zach Wilson, and this is just an offense nobody wants a part of. Nobody even wants to look at him, and this is making us be able to get Breece Hall for absolute dirt cheap right now. He's slowly been getting worked back into this offense after coming off his ACL injury. We can look at the usage, but he's seeing more and more of a snap share every week and getting involved in the receiving game. And Dalvin Cook will be involved in this offense, but we've seen time and time again that Breece Hall has the high upside explosive play ability that we want to see. And if you're going to trade for him or even start him this week, he has one of the best matchups against the Broncos run defense, who have been absolutely atrocious so far this season. So this is probably the last time you'll get him at this low of a cost. But the second half to the reason on why he's such a good value right now is because the Jets have faced their hardest defenses so far this season, and their schedule really eases up for the second half. Not to mention that they have an early bye week coming up soon, and he'll probably get an uptick in volume after that week. He's still leading Dalvin Cook in routes out of the backfield and carries, so the hope is not completely lost on Breece Hall, regardless of how ugly the stats look so far. He will finish as a top 25 running back this year. Right now, he's about the RB33. But another guy we need to be buying low on that I want to talk about very quickly is Diontae Johnson, and this is one of my favorites. As we know, he's been on IR with a hamstring injury in a Steelers offense that has looked absolutely atrocious recently, but he's kind of been forgotten about through this injury in week 1. He's still super valuable. In one half of football in week 1 before he got injured, he had 6 targets on 50 yards. Last year, he ranked 9th in wide receiver usage and had the 4th most targets since 2019. He was top 10 in man and zone coverage efficiency, which means he can get open. And all of these stats are pretty much telling you he can still play. He almost had 1,000 yards last season with 0 touchdowns, which is absolutely unheard of. He's quite literally the epitome king of buy low right now. The Steelers are needing their wide receiver 1 back right now. It is pretty clear to see if you've watched any of these games, and he's slated to come back right after their bye week around week 7 or 8. So if you could trade a guy like Christian Kirk for him right now, I would most definitely do that. But that is going to finish off this video for the guys you need to be buying low and selling high on to create a super team later down the line of the season. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to like it up, and I'll see you guys in the next video coming soon.